Ladies and gentlemen, your government has lied to you. Well, they're always lying, but every other word's a lie with the government. But they've lied to you in a big way today. But I'm just going to bed these calves up, and then we'll get onto the subject on why they've lied to you. Also, everyone, welcome to today's video. And if you don't know who I am, I'm Farmer Will Mellor. And if when you've watched the video, please get a thumbs up and subscribe below. And yes, I'll just get these calves bedded, and we'll discuss not only what the government has lied to you about, but we're going to discuss 7 different ways the government has been bad for farming since they came into power. The Labour government, since they came into power back in July last year. But yeah, we'll get these cars bedded up, and then we'll discuss why the government has lied to you. Right, so like I was saying, well, I'm actually just sorting some peds out for some cows. But like I was saying, the government's lied to you, and we'll explain why it's lied to you. So basically, what's happened is the government are trying to reach net zero on the carbon footprint. Now, one of the things they want you to do is cut out meat and dairy, and they're actually pushing for lab-grown meat. So lab-grown meat is meat that's manufactured and grown in a lab. Now personally, I wouldn't eat it. I wouldn't touch it with a barge pole, purely because it's not right in my own opinion. You can't beat a bit of homegrown British beef. So the fact that they're trying to push for that is bad enough. Now, supposedly, we as farmers, especially livestock farming, sheep, beef, dairy, are big emissions of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. So, you know, they wanted to get carbon neutral. Now, what the government doesn't want you to know is the fact that lab-grown meat is 4 to 25 times worse for the environment than normal, conventional farmed meat. So the carbon dioxide is 4 to 25 times greater from lab-grown meat than it is from conventional meat, beef, sheep, dairy. Basically, that's what it is. And the government are lying to us. Why are they saying this is better for us than conventional farmed? And it's actually worse for the environment. So that's a big factor to take into account here. So personally, I think the government, the Labour government at stake here, have got it in for us farmers. Now, that's bad enough. Stand on, let me pets. So that is obviously, you know, that's a big, going to knock farming. You know, they seem to have got it against us farmers, which brings us on to our other fact that we're going to talk about today, which is the 7 reasons, so that's 7 reasons Labour government have knocked us farmers. So 7 reasons why they've done 7 things basically against us. We'll start with the big one, and that's what farmers are protesting about at the minute. and that is the inheritance tax. So, back in October last year, the UK government, Labour, took away the inheritance tax relief for farmers, which basically is, we don't, as farmers, as general, we don't make a big enough income to pay an inheritance tax on the value of the land and the farm, so we get relief. We have done for years, like 20, 30 years plus even. I don't even know how long it's been going on for, but the only way that farmers are going to be able to pay this inheritance tax is by selling land. Now, a farm without land is pretty useless, really. That's like having a car without wheels. We need the land to farm. That brings us onto the second thing the Labour government have done to us, which is BPS payments. So, back in the 1990s, when we were part of the EU, the EU bosses in Brussels that were governing farming at the time decided that, well, they basically had a big problem on their hands, overproduction of food. And they didn't want farmers to... Farmers were already suffering because they were getting less money for the product they were producing, what it cost. So they decided back then, we'll subsidise farming and we'll pay farmers a subsidy every year at Christmas, and that will keep farmers happy, plus they'll look after the landscape and keep it as it is. They were the rules and conditions. So the EU bosses decided, farmers, you can have this money, just keep farming, keep the countryside looking the way it is, don't make any big changes to it, and we'll give you a paycheck once a year at Christmas, which was fair enough. So they wanted us to keep producing food when there were already mountains of food stacked up everywhere. And yeah, they basically carried on drawing this payment every year since the late 1990s, I think. I actually watched a documentary actually on YouTube about it, so if I can tag the link somewhere, you can go and watch it, which was, I think it was a documentary in 1999. So go back and watch that if you can, if I can put it here somewhere. The other big thing, I'm getting confused now, but basically, that's we've been paid for years, like 30 odd years plus. We've been paid by, well, when we come out the EU, when Great Britain, the United Kingdom came out the EU, the UK government carried on paying us as British farmers that subsidy, but it changed to BPS, and BPS was Basic Payment Scheme, and basically Labour have come in. It was being phased out as it was, but Labour have come in and just cut it off and said, look, it's not being phased out, you've got to live without it now. So that's number two, what Labour have done to us farmers, which we were all getting adjusted slowly to living without the BPS payments, the subsidy payments, but then the Conservative government that were in before the Labour brought in another thing called Sustainable Farming Initiative, was SFI for short, and SFI basically was very similar to the BPS payments, only you apply for it separately, and you basically had a choice to put your land in a scheme. If you've got certain varieties of wildflowers and grasses growing, you could put it in a scheme, claim some money for it, and you know, if you farmed it the way you were and you agreed to the terms and conditions, you got payment. And it wasn't only for that, it could have been for growing trees, it could have been for not using artificial fertiliser, for instance, or leaving a field margin around the outside of your field for wildlife. Basically, that's what SFI was, Sustainable Farming Initiative. Labour government have come in and they should have given us 6 weeks notice. That was the thing on the government website for farmers, it said we would give you 6 months, 6 weeks rather, not 6 months. That's my fault. 6 weeks notice of the scheme closing. It closed overnight. It closed last minute on the 11th hour. Basically, they turned around and just said, "It's oversubscribed. This scheme has been oversubscribed, so we're closing it now." So that's basically top and bottom of it. So that's the third thing they've got rid of. Which, farmers can't live without the payments, not with the way farming is. But we'll move on to the fourth thing right now. So the fourth thing is compulsory land purchase. So basically, Labour government have come in and given local county councils the power to compulsory buy land from farmers to develop houses, build car parks, what have you, and they don't even have to pay market value. That is an insult to us farmers. If we want to buy a piece of land, we have to go and buy it at market value, and then they can come and take it off us for next to nothing. And it's called, it's basically as it is, compulsory purchase. We as farmers just get a letter through post outlining a bit of land saying, "We're Derbyshire County Council, we're taking that land off you." Who says they can do that? But anyway, the Labour government does anyway. So that is the third thing. Is that fourth, isn't it? Inheritance tax, BPS payments, SFI, and obviously compulsory purchase. That's fourth thing. Move on to the fifth thing, fertiliser tax. So, one of the big things that Sir Keir Starmer has brought in, and Rachel Reeves, or Rachel Thieves, as most farmers like to call her, including me, because it basically is a thief. And as in the spring budget, it has become quite clear that she's taking a big pay rise herself, but she's taking money away from hard-working people like farmers. Not only farmers, but other hard workers out there, other professions and what have you, and businesses. Come in with this £50 a tonne fertiliser tax. And this is another big thing that they don't like, because fertiliser gives off a lot of carbon dioxide. Well, the manufacturing fertiliser gives off a lot of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, which is very bad for the net zero carbon emissions thing that they've signed. That leaves us as British farmers as a big disadvantage to the rest of the world, because if you go to France, for instance, or Southern Ireland, they won't be paying a £50 tax on fertiliser, or any other country out there, but yet we can fit it with that. So we as a country have to buy fertiliser at a higher price to the rest of the world to produce the same food. Doesn't add up, does it? So we as British farmers now are, at a severe disadvantage to the rest of the world, to the rest of the global food supply. So that's number 5, isn't it? Number 6. So the 6th reason why the UK government, the Labour government, have got it in for farmers. The Badgercle, right? So back in going on to my personal experience with TB, back in 2020, literally within a couple of weeks when we went into a COVID lockdown, if you all remember, Boris said don't go out, stay at home. We had our whole herd TB test. And we had one TB reactor and an inconclusive reactor as well. Never had TB before. So we had to have a cow culled, token off us, compulsory purchase of a cow. Not a nice experience in my own opinion. But at the same time, my area, where I am in North Derbyshire, became a badger cull area. So we were allowed to cull all the badgers in the area, and guess what? my herd of cows came TB free. That's because when you take, this is quite controversial, I might add, the badger culling, because there's a lot of for and against it. But my own personal opinion is, and goes for the whole of this YouTube video. This whole YouTube video is basically all my own personal opinion. That if you're controlling TB in farmed animals, you should be controlling it in the wildlife, and badgers are a big factor in spreading TB to farmed animals. So, to cows predominantly. So if you're controlling it in farmed animals, you should be controlling the wildlife. So there we go. That's why there was a badger cull set up by the Conservative government years and years ago, and why they included my area, which is North Derbyshire, in that region. And truth be told, my herd went clear of TB. Presumably, he had a good chance. One of the big reasons was the badger cull in the area. So, Labour bought in 5 years' time, we're scrapping the badger cull. No badger culls. So, TB will become a rife problem in farming in general, in cattle farming particularly. So, yeah, that sums it up really. They've just got it really in for us farmers. And then we'll go on to the 7th reason. Right, so on to the 7th reason now. And it's capital grants. So, basically, we got capital grants for doing things on farms. They can be anything that saves time, staff. There's basically a long list. Well, there was a long list on the government website, what they would pay farmers a grant, and it would vary from things from, it was, I think it was, I'd like to say it was 40 to 50% of the cost of the product or machine what you were going to have. So there was things on there like robot scrapers, precision drilling, precision GPS systems. There was robots. There was grants for slurry stores and what have you, and there was for roofing yards. There was quite a lot of different capital grants out there. I'm just picking a few off the top of my head. Personally, we applied for some many years ago when we built this milking parlour. One of the things was that thing there is a variable speed vacuum pump, and as far as I'm aware, you could still get that on a capital grant unless someone wants to enlighten me more. The Labour government come in, stop the capital grants for farmers. So that was another nail in the coffin for farming. So there is talk of them coming back, and you can apply for them again, but they don't give you a very big time scale to do this, and the fact that they stopped it very abruptly is a bit of a concern whether they will actually bring it back. So yeah, it's not looking good for farming right now, but hopefully that sums up this video. So put this down. What have we covered in this video? We've covered why the government is lying on you, and it's a very big lie. The fact that they want you to eat lab-grown meat. They're putting money into growing lab-grown meat. Personally, I won't touch it with a barge pole. Yet, in fact, the carbon emissions given off from lab-grown meat are 4 to 25 times greater than that in conventional farming methods, i.e. cow stood there, sheep, dairy. So beef, sheep and dairy, conventional and farmed, the way British farmers have done it for hundreds and hundreds of years, actually gives off less carbon emissions than lab-grown meat. So that's the big one of this video. Then we'll go on to the 7 reasons, the 7 ways that the Labour government have basically setting it into destroying British farming, which was 1, the inheritance tax relief gone, 2,
the BPS payments stopped abruptly.
rather than being phased out over a period of a few years.
3. The SFI.
Sustainable Farming Initiative being stopped very abruptly. Again, that was very abruptly. What was the fourth one again? Oh, the £50 a tonne on fertiliser tax. The compulsory land purchase of
Land being
broken away from farming. The badger cull, and so the badger cull being stopped, and the capital grants being stopped. So basically, that sums it up. Why the 7 reasons why the government hates farmers, basically, and I can't honestly see why Sir Keir Starmer thinks he's doing the greater good for this country when he doesn't. He's just jeopardising food security. You know, if farmers aren't there producing the food, what is this country going to eat? Are you going to ship it all in from abroad? That's clever, isn't it? When already Donald Trump in America has put tariffs on everything coming into his country. You know, he still wants to sell his. Why don't you put, presumably, if I was in government, I'd be putting a tariff on everything coming in. So it's going to cost more, surely, to ship food in from abroad. So,
yeah. Well, anyway,
I hope you've enjoyed this video. Sorry to be a bit on the negative side of things. Hopefully my next video won't be as on the negative side of farming, but I hope you enjoyed, and it did need to be talked about. That is the big thing. We can't just sit there and let the Labour government shaft us British farmers the way they are, because you can't just let people come in and walk all over you. They just, especially when they think they know what they're talking about British farming, and they don't have a clue unless they got up like me 5 o'clock every morning, milk my cows, same again 3:30 in the afternoon, and then spent the rest of the day farming, doing various different jobs, looking after the cows, everything else, 365 days a year. They don't have a clue on how to run a farm, yet they're making all these new rules and regulations and taxes and scrapping schemes for farmers that were there to help farmers produce food efficiently and to a high welfare standard, I might add. You can't just let people come in and do that. So yeah, anyway, that's enough of me waffling on. I hope you've enjoyed this little bit of a video, and if you have, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe below, and I will see you in my next one. I'll see you. Bye.